All right, I am waiting for make sure we are live. Okay, we are live. So, thank you everybody for being here today with us. I am super, super, super excited that we are here to celebrate this. This is fantastic. Prince's Sign of the Times Super Deluxe box set. And I am just thrilled for several reasons. First of all, I want to give massive thanks to, first and foremost, to Prince Rogers Nelson, who is the gift who continues to give to us continuously. And I am grateful now more than ever for his generosity during these very strange times. So I also would like to give a massive shout out to the estate for releasing such a deluxe box set of Sign of the Times. I am thrilled at the level of deluxeness. We will critique some of the deluxeness because that's who I am, but that does not mean that I'm not grateful. That means that I love Prince and I just want to make sure he is shown at the highest light ever. I also want to give a very special thanks to Mabel Ivory, who started me on this journey of doing these symposiums and events. But this is not a symposium. This is a celebration. It's really important that you guys understand that. It's not a symposium. It is a celebration. And what's really amazing about this is that I am back with my brothers. So my brothers have come back to be with me, and we started this journey back in 2017 in Brooklyn for the 30th anniversary of Sign of the Times back in 2017, which actually seems like a lifetime ago. It's only been 3 years, but it really feels like a lifetime ago. It's kind of crazy. So I also would like to give special thanks to Reverend for the amazing graphics that I have for this event. And I would like to remind everyone to please use the hashtag SOTTSDC for Sound of the Times Super Deluxe Celebration. I have to tell people like my mama, she was like, what does SOTT mean? So SOTT means Sign of the Times, and SDC is Super Deluxe Celebration. I really wanted to call this Super Deluxe Nerdfest because this is what it's all about. We are the Purple Nerds. This is a Purple Nerd event. It's not a symposium. It's not academic. It is Purple Nerdum. So I'm super excited. Normally, I wouldn't thank everyone who's participating because it's usually a 3-day event, but I am going to take the time today to thank everyone because this is only a 1-day event. And our very special guests this year are the one and only Dr. Fink, and I am indebted to him for agreeing to be with us on 2 roundtables today, and that is pretty darn incredible. So I have nothing but love for Dr. Fink. And then one of my favorite horn players of all time, he is my John Coltrane, even though that's blasphemous to him, but he is who I listen to, and that is none other than Eric Blow Your Horn Leeds, who will be joining us for the final roundtable this evening, starting at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. And then we have the best horn section in the world with just 2 horns, and that is Eric Leeds and Atlanta Bliss. And I am grateful that they will be joining us. And then we also have one of my favorite producers of all time, Nicolay. And Nicolay is a huge Purple nerd. So I am very excited that he's agreed to join us again. And I am going to also just say the names of the people who will be joining us today. Zaheer Ali, who is a part of the original panel. He's a dear friend of mine. Anil Dash, who I'm just indebted to for always showing up for me. Michael Dean, who has, in my opinion, the best Prince podcast ever. It's one of my favorites. Edgar Cruz, who's part of the Prince Twitter Threads posse. And we have Miles Marshall Lewis, an amazing author and journalist and nemesis, just kidding, friend. And we have Yost from Prince Vault. We have my very, very dear friend and Renaissance man, Jason Orr. My brother in Prince Academia, Elliott H. Powell, who brings, every time I see Elliott, I don't know, I'm just filled with love. And the one and only, there can be no other, my brother in Love Sexy, Harold Pride, my brother in Prince, Arthur Turnbull, who's here for me always, and I am forever indebted to him, and my longest Prince friend from high school, so he's known me the longest in my princedom, Ricky Wyatt. So I'm very excited to have all of my Prince nerds with me, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I will. So enough of that. We are going to get this party started. Just remember to use the hashtag again, SOTTSDC, and I'm going to bring on my brothers. So here we are. Let's see how we want to look. Hey. How's everybody today?
Good. What's going on?
We are back again for our 5th conversation together, which is like really, really, really crazy. And I am just so appreciative. And I know that Zaheer doesn't want me to do it, but I'm going
to. However,
we just gonna start the laughter right now. We're just gonna go ahead and just you
started was like,
Yep. I mean,
open the door. Got to do
what you asked for.
So we have this tradition where when we're in person, we sit in a certain order, and it's really literally based on alphabetical order. And I usually sit next to Elliott because he's kinder and gentler than Zaheer. Just kidding.
I was gonna say, but I also act like a buffer between you and Miles, right? Because when something happens, otherwise I'm sitting next to Miles. Like I could, that's I'm just that kind of divide. I'm that buffer between y'all.
Yes. So we're gonna get started, and we're not gonna break tradition because my grandmother says don't mix it up. Like just we're going to get started with our first question. And our first question is, what were you most looking forward to when you heard this box set was going to be released? So, was it the vault tracks? Was it the live, sound booth recording? Was it the remaster? Was it the book? Like, what was it about this that you're like, I can't wait for this thing to get my hands on this thing? So I'm going to sort of marry that with the second question. What did you get? So what were you excited about, and what did you get in terms of, did you get the vinyl? Did you get the CD? Did you get the vinyl? Are you going to get the record store day unpicture disc? We can talk about that. I'm glad you haven't seen that yet. So Zaheer, I want you to kick it off.
Editorializing the question.
Leading questions.
That's how we do. First of all, D'Angela, thank you so much, as always, for convening us and keeping alive the conversations around this incredible artist and his work. We are indebted to you for gathering us as you do, and we look forward to more. When I first heard about the set, before seeing what was going to be offered, I just initially just wanted a remaster of Sign of the Times. Just like, can I get the actual album remastered, like real remastered, not tinkered with Pro Tools like the Purple Rain was, right? Like legit remaster, not post-produced. So yeah, I was excited about that. And then when I saw the track list, I was like, oh my God. So for me, it was the remaster of the album and the vault tracks. I got the Super Deluxe vinyl set because I don't even have a CD player in my computer anymore. And it's like, vinyl has seemed to become much more durable than CDs at this point. So I got the vinyl set. I got the Peach limited edition I'm, like you, I know I've heard you say you're upset that they didn't give us Peach in the Super Deluxe. So I wanted a colored disc. So I got the Peach set, and then I also got the limited edition 7-inch box set. I was hoping for a cute number. My number was something like 1098. I was looking for like 1987 or 777 or something cute, but I got 1098. But that's what I got.
All right. So Anil, what were you most looking forward to?
I think my path follows there a lot. At first, I was just like, can they make the record sound decent? Because I've been working from the CD version now for damn near 30 years, and it always sounded bad. It always sounded like, man, this is, and something like Adore in particular, where it's like every time I listen to it now, and it hits thousands of times, I hear something new. And that was with the like squinting your ears at the the bad master of the original version. So that was as far as I got my hopes. I was, oh man, it's gonna sound good. And then exactly that same thing. Like you get that. I think the first teaser they had was the 79 version, Can Never Take the Place of Your Man. I was like, man, I didn't even dared to hope. That wasn't even on my list of like, this is the dream. You know what I mean? And so that was such a elevation of the hopes for the thing. And then as soon as you saw the track list, and I think it was when Questlove did his birthday set or anniversary set honoring Prince, and he sort of scrolled through the songs like he and his DJ tool while he was doing his set, and everybody's like, wait, what was that now? And like Strange Relationship, what now? And you started to see all these other songs, and it was like, this is the holy grail. I mean, every conversation we've had for the last 30 years plus about what was in the vault, and every time we try to convince somebody who's not a fan yet, you don't even know there's this thing coming. Every single example we had, every single time we talked about, he made this many songs in this moment, it was about this set of music, this work. And so the idea that this almost myth that we had all been whispering to each other, back when it was still tape trading days, back when it was still digging through the vinyl in that other section of the record store, and have that be real. I mean, I think that was the hope, and honestly, shockingly, I think they, if anything, have exceeded. They certainly have met, which is, I mean, unbelievable. So that I'm very, very grateful for. I got, I don't even have a record player, and I got the CD and the vinyl set. I mean, it's like I still have the stupid Prince fund that I had when he was with us, which was like he might drop a show and I might need to have some money on hand for the last minute, and it's like rent in the Prince fund, and I still do that. And so that was it. I was like, I guess I got to get both, and I was like, I'm not going to go too wild, so I didn't get the single set. I know it's going to sell out, and I'm going to be sad and whatever, but I need the single set because I'm like, you don't even have a record player. Who you fooling? But yeah, I got it, and it was blown away. I mean, D'Angelo, you just lifted up the box at the beginning when you started here. I assume that's empty because if you did that with one hand, man, you've been working out. I was like, the weight of the thing, just the heft. I was like, that alone, I was like, man, that made it worth it to me. I'm like, a heavy ass box of Prince stuff? Like, yes, please. That's Christmas.
All right. So Miles, what about you?
Hey, so much to say. Where do I begin? Well, okay, I bought the 13 LP set, and when I bought it, I didn't have a turntable, and so I bought a turntable after the fact, because that's how I wanted to hear it. I remember seeing you say something, D'Angelo, on Facebook, somebody recommending a certain turntable to you. And I sort of ran with that recommendation and bought that turntable, found some speakers because that's how I needed to hear it. I feel like Prince gave me life lessons, during the course of his existence here. And one of the major ones was about reinvention, about reinventing yourself and the value of that. And for me, Sign of the Times was always a period I look back on, and even having lived it in real time during high school, that, okay, so his band is gone and he's decided he's going to go it alone, and he's talented by himself, to the point where he can still do that and not rely on anybody else, and sort of do his own thing, and reassemble a bunch of new people, or not necessarily all new. Some of them were holdovers from the so-called counter revolution, but to just assemble a new band and create a new sound. That was like really like wow to me. But in terms of the box set itself, I bought 1999 like as like the vinyl Super Deluxe, right? I bought that and it arrived maybe 2 weeks before the Sign of the Times one, because prior to that I had just been streaming it on Apple Music. And there's just this value of owning the music again, you know, of holding it in your hand and having it as like a real product that I really miss. You know, I stopped buying vinyl probably with the 12 inches from like Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation, probably like that's like 89 or something, into 90. And so doing that again is really cool. But it was like comparatively with the 1999 box set, they're just these amazing collector's items. You know, the books are beautiful. The information is great. The essays are great. The pictures are great. And the treasure trove of songs. Like I wrote something for Afropunk this month concerning bootlegs and the bootleg tradition of Prince enthusiasts, you know, and how we sort of trade with each other, and you know, you're not real unless you had this version of this. And I had heard like maybe at least 20 of these songs before in various versions, but like I was looking the most forward to having them remastered and to hearing the songs that I didn't know existed. You know, I'd never heard about Blanche. You know, I personally had never heard about Cosmic Day. I know it had been floating around and stuff, and I read the comments of people talking about it when it was released as like a preview song. But I wasn't privy to Cosmic Day. I'd heard a lot of the other stuff, but even with the other stuff, to have the full version of everything and to have it remastered was fantastic. You know, I'd had the collaboration that he did with Miles Davis, but it went on longer than the version that I had, and of course it was much clearer. And so that's amazing. I mean, I often, as a music critic, right, I often take it back to the Beatles because that's sort of just the rock critic of, you know, default. And I have seen all the different versions of the Beatles albums that have come out. You know, they resell it to you every 5 years, right? And but the box sets that have come out for Abbey Road and for Sgt. Pepper, you know, and for the White Album have been like really amazing. And I was always hoping as a diehard Prince fan that he would be accorded the same respect. And that time has arrived, you know, and yeah, they couldn't have done a better job to me. And I look forward to the future Super Deluxe editions. All right, Elliott.
Yeah. So I'll start and say that I got the Super Deluxe, I got the Super Deluxe CD version. I don't have a record player, right? I do somehow have a CD kind of attachment. So, but I still wasn't gonna really use it. I'm from a kind of CD era. So like for me, CDs are just the thing that I still very much still buy, you know, even though obviously everything's available for streaming or purchase through like an MP3, I still enjoy buying the music. This, as Miles pointed out, right, there's still something about holding on to that, actually something tangible, right? To be able to hold on to music is like this really, really important thing for me. And obviously liner notes are still very much important. And so I was really looking forward to kind of really sort of getting into the liner notes. But you know, the most important thing, or the thing that I was really most excited about, had to be the vault tracks. It seems like with every Super Deluxe release, that's the first thing that I go to. I'm always going to the vault tracks first. If you ask me what I've been listening to over the past few weeks, it's been the Sign of Time vault tracks and Mariah Carey's Rarities album. That is, so like for me, unreleased stuff is like what I really, really value, because because it helps me kind of think through what kind of editing process, right, a particular artist might have had, right? So like thinking about like, why put this song versus this song in the album? what else was actually recorded in that era, what that might be able to tell us about a particular artist in terms of where they're thinking songwriting wise, what kind of sort of sort of instrumentation, production are they working with, the kinds of engineers, right? So for me, the vault kind of tracks, the unreleased material, is not simply like what else is out there, even though I'm very much about that. But for me, it also provides kind of really more of a window into the artist. And so that's like really the first thing that I wanted to go into. And as Miles also brought up, like I think all of us, I just wanted to hear crisp, clean versions of songs that I have had that are extremely muffled. I just, I was like, yes, please, whatever, because I wanted to hear like emotional pump in a kind of, really kind of pristine way. And so for me, having the vault as a remastered thing was for me everything. And the estate is just raising the bar with each kind of super deluxe in terms of the volume that they're giving us from the vault. And so I was just like, when I saw that track list, I was like, oh my God. And then, when I actually got the thing, I was like, yeah, this thing is heavy. Like you could just, it's heavy. It's really, really heavy. And so, yeah, I did want to get also the vinyl version. But I'm trying to think if I can actually say this. I think I can say this. The University of Minnesota bought my version, and so I couldn't actually justify getting both, right? So like there would be a very awkward conversation if I bought up the whole store, right? So I was like, let me just get this, and they'll be fine with this, but I can't do these other kinds of things. So like that's partly why I ended up also just getting the CD version.
We can get you a doctor's note that says you need to have the vinyl version.
Dr. Fink.
Dr.
Very much so. So for me personally, no one's mentioned this, what I was most looking for was the DVD for the New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
That is what I was really looking forward to. And I honestly wish that the First Avenue, for those of you who don't know, my name, is Prince. I really wish that show was on this box set because I think it would make a really good pairing, and also sort of continue the narrative of, ending the revolution, starting the new band, also seeing the growth of that new band. And I just think it would have been like a brilliant bookend to have the First Avenue set and the New Year's Eve show. Mm-hmm. So that's what I was most looking forward to. And so I'm one of those people that I'm going to stop when I hear myself echoing. So I'm going to mute you guys just so you know. Okay. I think it was Miles. I'm going to blame it on I'm going to blame it on Miles because I don't want, the people who are listening to hear that echo. So that was what I was most looking forward to. And I was very excited about the inclusion of the Utrecht show. I'm one of those people, I wish all the Utrecht shows were in there. I actually just want a live box set. That's what I want. I want a live box set. I would love to have that. And I would also love to we got the singles box set, which I'm very appreciative of. I got one of those. I also got the vinyl and I also got the CD. I'm not getting the record store unpicture disc because I wish there would have been pictures of prints on these picture discs that are coming out for Record Store Day, but I'm very happy that they're doing something for Record Store Day. The other thing I was most looking forward to was the book for the Jeff Katz photos. I'm a massive Jeff Katz fan. I love all of his photography. I really wanted to see any alternate takes. So everyone has to understand when I talk about Prince, I often criticize what's coming out because I love Prince. Did you guys hear me? I bought the vinyl, I bought the CD, I bought the singles box set, and I buy every single thing Prince has ever released. I always have, I always will. So I'm complaining because I love him. So let's get to the complaining. All right. So for the cover, I really wish this would have been inside the book. And I really wish that the book that we have here would have been the cover. And the reason why I really wish that the book would have been the cover is because of that blue, and it really pops. And I feel like the cover that's on the actual release is more like a introspective picture and would have worked better as the book cover. That's me personally. And in terms of some of the pictures and the layout of the book, because I have a design degree, I have some issues with some of the photography that was chosen. And more specifically, when it was chosen to either be a full page or a 3/4 spread, I thought that they could have made some different choices there. But for the most part, I really love all the photography that they have in there. For Dwayne's liner notes, I actually wish that there are liner notes also for the Sign of the Times release. There are only liner notes just for the vault tracks. So I really missed having the liner notes for the actual Sign of the Times release. And I mean, obviously this book would get really, really big, but it would have been, I mean, I love, seeing the lyric sheets. I love seeing the box reels. So if you could have had all the box reels and all the lyrics, I would have just been on cloud nine. But I am very, very thankful. I am grateful for what we do have. And so I was really excited about the book because I'm a physical person. I love physical forms of media. I always have. I'm a massive book collector as well as a record collector and CD collector. So the book was actually really important to me. I love that it is a bound hardcover book compared to the 1999 book, which I love. The book in 1999 is like actually fantastically designed. I have comparing the two just in terms of the design, I actually prefer the 1999, but in terms of the just the hardcoverness of the Sign of the Times is really brilliant, and I really appreciate that. The card stock is really nice and heavy, and it's printed very well. So I was really, really excited about that. All right, I've talked enough. I could go on and on and on. I could talk for 90 minutes about that book. But Zaheer, do you want to say something? I feel like you want to say something. All right, so we're going to get to our next question. And because I already kicked it off. And the next question is, I want to hear your pros and cons about the book. So Zaheer.
Okay, I'm going to try to say this as diplomatically as possible, but it might fail. Okay, first of all, I loved about the liner notes or the book that Daphne Brooks's essay was included, because her essay situated Prince in the intersections of what was happening in American history at the time, because I'm a historian, but also as a Black artist. And I think that the rest of the packaging and the podcast and the framing around this project has really minimized and decentered Prince as a Black artist. It has erased Black artistic labor over these questions about who contributed what. I would like to hear from the contributors what they learned or gained from Prince, not just what they felt they gave to him, because there is this trope in American history whereby, like going all the way back to Phyllis Wheatley, the first published Black poet in America, where when she was published, people didn't believe she wrote it. They accused her of plagiarism. She needed to have white people vouch for her. And then you move all the way to like Frederick Douglass had the same problem. William Lloyd Garrison had to vouch for Frederick Douglass. And then when people you couldn't say like, oh, they didn't do it. Then they went searching for white ancestors. Oh, it was because Frederick Douglass was biracial, right? So there's always been this denial of Black artistic genius or an intellectual production that is a constant narrative in America. And I don't think that we can act like we're not inheritors of that framework. We saw this with many people not wanting to accept that Prince had two Black parents coming from a Black community. And so there's that. There's also this framework in how people talk about Black artists and athletes as Black raw talent in need of white refinement. Whether it's like white coaching or white management or, there's this language of sophisticated whiteness that needs to be brought into the rawness that is the Black genius, as though the Black genius is not studied, is not practiced, it's not worked. Look, some of the impression I got from some of this stuff, it was as though Prince didn't come from a musical background. His father was a jazz player. His mother was a jazz vocalist. He came up in a Black community of culture producers, right? So this idea of like, we brought all this stuff to him is just really disturbing to me. So I just have to say that. I'm not dismissing the collaborations where they exist. But I think it's really important how we talk about some collaborations versus others. I also think that it's important to recognize the genre of music that Prince was producing on its own terms as art. And I think there's a little bit of genre snobbery that some contributors bring to how they talk about his work. And I'm just, like Eric Leeds is quoted in there saying like, I really like Wendy and Lisa's music. So I really like when they contributed to Prince. And there's this sense as though like what Prince is doing is not like viable on its own. So that was just my impression. I think that I'm glad Daphne Brooks introduced the question of race. I would like to extend that we don't just interrogate Prince's Blackness, but we interrogate the whiteness of his collaborators, and how that whiteness functions and how they related to him and how that whiteness functions in the way they talk about him now. So that to me was really important. I think the liner notes are helpful. I have to pick a bone with Dwayne when he writes Dwayne $2 liner notes when he's writing about Crucial, and he says, this Sign of the Times was the Prince and Revolution album because 11 of the songs were composed while the revolution existed. Well, in that case, The Time was a revolution album. Madhouse was The Family was a revolution album. I'm like, this question is like, there's these leakages of authorship. And questions of authorship that I find concerning when how we talk about Prince, and so that to me was like the biggest challenge I had with the book. But I loved it for the Jeff Katz photos. I don't have the designer's eye as you, so I'm just like happy to see the pictures, whether they half page, full page. I'm like, ooh. I wish Jeff Katz, I don't know what the licensing issues are, but I really wish he would be able to publish a book like the other photographers have, because it's not just a Sign of the Times era, it's like the Parade era. I mean, just really amazing, amazing photography that he was able to do. So I appreciated that. That was your question, was about the book, right? Just about the book?
No, actually, yeah, it's just about the book.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'll stop there because we can talk about the music after.
All right. Yeah, that's going to be next. All right, Anil, the book.
So I think I echo so many of those thoughts. I think the first part to start with is, Prince, in an odd way, did not have a lot of reverence for his catalog. Right? Like he was always the next thing. My favorite song is the next song I write. My favorite album is the next one I'm making. I don't want to look at the past. I don't believe in time. And so, and that manifests in a lot of ways. I mean, we'll talk about the sound of the remaster and all that stuff too. But even with the packaging, like, Sign of the Times was still that vinyl experience, and it was opening it up and seeing the hand-drawn peace symbol every time O is in Sign of the Times in the lyrics, and that was a very visceral part of like, man, he sweated the details. Like that was such a moving thing, and then never looked back at it. I mean, just never. And actually, I was pleasantly surprised to see in photos of Paisley Park in the Sign of the Times room since they actually incorporate a lot of the iconography imagery of that era. Even with the packaging on this, they brought back the heart, cross, peace sign symbol motifs from there, which Prince actually did fairly quickly. I mean, he moved on to Sign of the Times to Lovesexy very quickly, and so it didn't hang out with those symbols a long time either. And I was like, they were very evocative to me. And I love that even the cardboard box that the thing ships in had the big symbol on it as it was. And so that care and attention, and D'Angelo, again, you're better studied on what the design means, but it is designed. And I mean, let's be real. Like there was a lot of stuff he did, especially later in the 90s, whatever, that was like we did the best we could in a moment. And I mean, folks who designed it said that. Like I didn't know what I was doing. I made it up as we went along. And so the fact that there was care in presentation, I think is there. The fact that you can have a nuanced discussion about, well, which would be more evocative of the set as the cover image? Should it be this ghosted image of Prince? Should it be, this blue image of Prince? I mean, that we can have that conversation is worthy of the art. And that makes me really, really happy because we hadn't had that care put into it. It was like, this is, to my mind, the greatest album ever made, and it didn't sound like it, and it didn't look like it, and now it doesn't. So that, as a fundamental respect, I think is really, really, really key. I think very clearly everybody involved in this release and the estate, heard the criticisms that there was a Sign of the Times DVD release, I think in Europe for the film, and did not really incorporate any Black voices into the, most of the narrative around the criticism of the film and the contextualization of the film. And I think that, seeing Daphne Brooks and Dave Chappelle and Lenny Kravitz as the first voices, in this, I think it's really key. And I mean, this is a Black man's Black album, until he makes the Black album. This is a very clear statement about who he is and what he is. And so I was grateful to see that there. I do think, I'm sort of of two minds. Seeing, I mean, just the care and the quality of, for example, the podcast, I thought is a seriousness. There's a journalistic seriousness to this work. I think the points are well observed about the claiming of credit. I mean, that is what it is, and there's no question. Well, one, even if we could put aside praise, we can't. But even if we could, obviously the voices are always going to people who are still here, and that is always how credit goes. Is people take the credit where they get it. Then we have the dynamic of how whiteness claims, to be the filter, to be the lens through, which artistry is elevated, which artistry is credentialed, is treated as credible. And then, not for nothing, there's also the fact that Prince was fast and loose with credits. You know what I mean? Sometimes people didn't get their credit, and that can be a debt that people want to settle after years and decades. And, I don't know the accuracy. I wasn't in the room. I don't know what's there. But I think all those factors are in play when we see the narrative being constructed. And so I can share the concerns and misgivings about who gets what credit when and who gets to say, you introduced me to this. And I am also at the same time grateful there is a conversation going on, because I feel like when, the Beatles reissues in the 90s, right, it was a cultural moment. Everybody was coming out of the woodwork. This is how this record mattered. This is how it influenced things. But when you hear the radio today, it is influenced by Sign of the Times. It is still true. That is still there. And so to take this thing seriously, academically, to say that a photo of the reels that this work was recorded on is worth preserving as a historical artifact was not respected in that way. I mean, it just wasn't true. We have never seen those reels. We've never seen the Jeff Katz outtakes taken seriously as art to be preserved, And so that part, I just was grateful for. Like, finally, for years I've been, present company accepted, hoping that more people would see this as a work deserving of the same elevation that we do to the other great works of culture, period, of preserving film. I can't even count the number of, Star Wars re-releases and special effects, essays, and here's how they did it, and behind the scenes, and da 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 da. I was like, this is every bit the cultural artifact that is. This is every bit the cultural artifact a TV show was, or whatever else was. And so, just the fact that it was taken seriously and reverently and elevated to a worthy place, I think is really, really powerful. And Dwayne, I know you're in the comments there. I do think the notes on what's there are exceptional. I mean, again, it's just the documentation that taking Prince fans seriously enough to think that we care about the moment of creation because we can form an analysis did not happen, period, in the 90s. Did not happen for the most part in the 2000s, maybe until post, Rock Hall induction, which again is another, the credentialism and the validation from a rock industry. But to be able to say, oh, this is the kind of thing that somebody might want to study is there. And then that it connects so deeply to the emotion because, my son is 9 years old. His favorite Prince song is Starfish and Coffee. I had told him the story. I said, in a chat room in the 90s, Prince told me The lyric was originally Starfish and Pee-Pee. And I remember that all these years. And then to show him, here's in Prince's hand, the lyrics, and you know this song, and you can listen to it, and you can see it, and we're taking this artist seriously, and also knowing that he's in our heart. I mean, that to me is the whole picture. I don't feel, and even I love the 1999 release. I accepted the Purple Rain release. I think this was the time I was like, this record means so much to me. I told Jeff Katz this in his Instagram comments. This is the record that I have framed by my desk as a reminder of what you can do in this world. Like if you do your best, if you really, and you do convene geniuses with you, absolutely, you do bring, like but you can be the leader. It can be your voice, your vision, and you get the people together, and you get yourself together, and you excel. This is what you could be, and that was the reminder to me, like, why do you frame that moment? This is what this record could be, and I never felt the world gave this album its due. Period. Not in accolades, not in sales, not in recognition, not in anybody outside of us. The people in this conversation, in this chat, they did not give it its due. And this is to say, no, this artifact is going to prove we take this thing seriously, and it elevates over time. This will be the beginning of a renaissance for how this artistic creation is seen in the world. So that makes me happy. And the book does weigh something. It sits on your coffee table, and it does have some damn heft to it, as it should. And it looks like $1 million, as it should. And it's good enough that we can quibble about what's excluded. I do wish there were more liner notes and other studio sessions. I do wish there were more Jeff Katz photos. I wish he'd annotated the photos about the shoes. Sure, absolutely. But they took it seriously. They didn't cheap out. They put some money in it. It didn't get distracted by the next thing. I'm on to the next. I'm just going to get this out the door. Yeah, that means the world to me.
Very well said, Anil. You said so many things that really, really resonated with me. And the main thing being that Prince never really got his due for a Sign of the Times. So I'm really happy that the estate chose to just, give reverence to this, incredible, document of Prince. I mean, it's definitely worth it. And I'm also going to say that also deserves the same level of respect. I'm just going to say that because it is just as incredible. Okay. All right. So Miles, talk to us the book.
I unmuted. You can hear me, correct?
Yes.
Well, so let's take Thanksgiving, for example, right? Like when you're around your family, often you're kind of reduced to a 12-year-old again when you're around family members who, sort of remember you, and lock you in that period of time. Like, I feel like for me, Sign of the Times, it just takes me back to being a 16-year-old, So my thoughts about it tend to be kind of scattered, like I don't speak like a Rolling Stone writer. I'm just a 16-year-old again because that's, hearing it over and over and over at 16 is sort of locked it in my cellular situation. So bear with me, I have this to say in terms of it being taken seriously. I wholeheartedly agree, and that's sort of what I like the most about the book and about the set period. If you take something like The Velvet Underground and Nico, right? It was produced by Andy Warhol, but not really. This is the famous cover with the banana on it. If you were alive in 1969, I believe it was, and you bought it, you could like peel off the banana from the front cover. And this has been sort of re-released with, the same ability to be able to do that, because this record is supposed to be so important that they've re-released it in its original form. And there are other rock albums that have had re-releases that were like substantial, that were hefty, that reflected their importance to the pantheon, and I always felt that Sign of the Times deserved the same thing. And this is it. I mean, I don't have any criticisms of the book, really. I will piggyback on what Zaheer said in terms of let's say, the diminishment of the Black influence on the record and on Prince during this period of his artistry. I'm glad, in terms of the Sign of the Times podcast, that Levi Caesar, was spoken to. I wish someone would find Miko Weaver to see what he has to say about being there. But the creation of this album and the creation of Love Sexy has so much to do with the Oakland band of Sheila E. that Prince brought in and replaced the primarily white musicians that he was around in the Revolution with, this Black band that created Love Sexy and the Black Album and so much of Sign of the Times. I do recall interviewing Prince and asking him about what I had read concerning introducing horns in his work, because I'd read, probably in a book by Alan Light, about how Prince had maybe seen Springsteen, and because of Clarence Clemens being on stage and seeing the audience reaction of that Prince decided, oh, well, I need to get, let me call somebody, maybe Alan Leeds has a brother who can play sax and I can put him in the band, and as well, just I think it was Bob Seger probably, who is often sort of credited sideways for the creation of Purple Rain, because Prince needed a rock anthem and that would captivate the audience at his show, that could be a great closer, and so he was gonna do this thing that was sort of pseudo influenced by Bob Seger. So I asked Prince about this, and so Prince debunked both of those things immediately. But what he also told me was that it's interesting how critics want to sort of prop him up on like white shoulders, like how these ideas couldn't have been original ideas of his, that he had to sort of have done them under the aegis or the influence of white rock musicians, and it's something I vehemently disagree with, obviously, but it's something that sort of needs to be, like, we need to shine a brighter light on that, because it's unfair and it's insulting, to his genius. What else do I have here? Well, okay, so as an incidental, I bought probably the most expensive configuration of this situation, the 13 LP set, because I felt, and it was the first thing that I actually bought from the estate, who sort of mailed it to me late, but we'll get to that later. But I wanted to vote with my dollars. I felt it was very important that, wow, okay, so it's very clear to me that they put serious effort into making this for the fans exactly what we would want. The vault tracks are crazy. We get to see the Jeff Katz outtakes. It's everything we would want. So if I don't buy it, then maybe they'll think, oh, well, this isn't worth doing. Or when we create this, then they don't come. And, so I was like, no, okay, I'm going to buy it. And I'm glad I did. And I'm glad I bought 1999. And I will continue to support, I think I'm beyond the point of just sort of streaming the stuff and being happy to have it. I think there's just this value to owning it as a tangible product and to support what they're doing. I do want to see Love Sexy done. I agree with you wholeheartedly there. And I want to see personally, what is my other, Parade. But we'll discuss that. So yeah, I guess that's sort of how I felt about it.
All right, thank you for that. I mean, if you look at a lot of the Prince forums or Facebook or what have you, a lot of people are asking for Parade. I'm sure Parade is going to get deluxed. I'm not like worried about Parade. I'm worried about. So as many times as I can say, because Love Sexy is important to me. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's just as important as Sign of the Times for me. And I just want to see it before I die. I mean, because I'm 50. I'm turning 50 in November. And it was an incredible era. And this was the beginning of that incredible era. And I really wish that there could be, and one of the reasons why I actually ended up doing this, and I actually need to give a special shout out to Tanya Pagis, because actually this event wouldn't have happened if she didn't really push me. After the symposium over the summer, I was exhausted. And someone asked me, "Aren't you going to do something for this?" And I was like, no. I don't want to do. I am tired. And then, it was like, it's the way that Tanya phrased it. And I was like, I'm sure Prince got tired, but did he stop for us? No. And to go back to what Anil said, like, this is an important release. This is also how we all started. And I was like, I'm smoking crack. Obviously, I need to because, this is the album. Like, if you're not going to do something for, and that's one of the reasons why I actually did the 2017 event, which was actually the 30th anniversary of Sign of the Times. I was actually really upset that nothing was being done just to acknowledge that it was the 30th anniversary of freaking Sign of the Times. So thank you, Tanya. I really appreciate you. And Harold Pride as well, because he was her backup. So we wouldn't be here. So I'm very, very excited to pass the mic to Elliott H. Powell.
All right. I mean, I'm trying to think of things to say that y'all haven't already said, and I think I'll just like echo a number of things that's been said. And I'll start by actually centering my students. So for those who don't know, I've been teaching a class since the spring semester of 2016. So this is when Prince was, sort of still with us. A class that's about like Minneapolis and the Minneapolis sound and Prince in the 1980s. And it's also about sex culture. So my work is about music and sex culture more broadly. And without fail, when we get to listening to Sign of the Times, students fall head over heels for it. It is definitely a touchstone moment for them, in a way that doesn't exist for the other albums that we listen to. It's very, for me, it's interesting in the sense of like totally unexpected, but it's also to be expected, right? Because as we've all talked about, this is a groundbreaking touchstone album. It is an album that is long past its kind of dues that it should have gotten for a very long time. I know that that really sort of I think it was yesterday, right, about sort of the Joshua Tree, right, being the best album, and it's sort of a neo, right? It was great, right, because this is another kind of passing over of Sign of the Times, and it's like, gosh, like I can't tell you enough of just students when they listen to Sign of the Times, when we talk about Sign of the Times, the title track there, because I situated when we talk about Minneapolis's response to really the AIDS crisis, and so that becomes the week in which we're listening to that album, and so they've already kind of fallen in love with the title track. You get to Dorothy Parker, you get to Starfish and Coffee. They're just their minds are just really blown in a really important way. And so one of the things that actually really excited me about the this whole kind of super deluxe version and the book is that it again makes things tangible for students, right? When we can hopefully be back in person, right? I'm looking forward to like sharing this book with my students, like for them to actually see this and look at the pictures, to kind of see Prince's handwriting. Those kinds of things are really, really crucial because it helps them have a deeper understanding of this album. That for them, again, they grew up in a particular environment where they know 1999, they know Purple Rain, they might know sort of Around the World in a Day, they do know Controversy, but for like whatever reason, Sign of the Times is just an album that they just really haven't heard and haven't really listened to. And so it is one of those albums where they're like, well, we don't know the singles on this one, right? That's a really kind of important thing. And so for me, I really love the book because of that. It gives students all these other kinds of ways of learning about the album. The kind of critiques. And I'm just going to go back to what Zaheer was talking about. If you are going to put the live shows on this album, I would like to hear the voices of people who were part of the live show. That this is so, you know, what I wanted to also happen in the book would be some kind of roundtable discussion, right? Which would obviously, for me, also heavily include Kat, and you know, Kat and you know, Levi. Like, we can go down the list, but I wanted that roundtable discussion, right? Because we're talking about Sign of the Times as an album, but what you packaged along with it are 2 live shows, right? And so I want to hear from the people who were part of those shows, right? As much as I've appreciated the rollout, and I will give kudos to everyone in the state, because it's a fantastic rollout from start to finish. This has been great. But at the same time, I'm missing those voices. I'm missing those perspectives. I'm missing them also getting their dues, right? Because, you know, if we're talking about Sign of the Times as an era, if we're talking about Love Sexy as an era being overlooked and overshadowed, then also that means that the people who were part of that era are also being overshadowed. And so if we're giving Sign of the Times its right due, I feel like we should also give the people who were part of that the same kind of praise. And so for me, reading through the book, I was missing those voices. I wanted to hear those voices when I was, you know, listening to the podcast, right? Wanted to hear those voices. We did get some, but I wanted more, like, you know, especially because they're still with us, right? Especially because they're still with us. And I want to ensure that folks know about them, right? You know, because we called them, you know, so the band with no name, right? There's a particular kind of erasure even in that moment from 87 to 89. And so I want people to know their names. I want people to actually know their artistry. It's a really important thing that I think this moment could have really captured. And so for me, that's one of the major slippages that happens with this whole kind of re-release.
So, Elliott, I mean, I hear you loud and clear, because, you know, because I'm such a lover of this band, and this band being, you know, Miko, Levi, you know, Kat and Wally and Greg and, you know, Dr. Fink and Eric Lees and Atlanta Bliss, and don't forget Sheila E. You can say whatever you want about her, but she can play some drums. And she is an incredible musician. You can never take that away from her. And so I really do wish that, so one of the things I really loved about the German release of the Sign of the Times film was that they did talk to Kat, and I thought that was incredible. They talked to Levi. What I really want to happen is, you know, as you said, Elliott, an audio commentary, particularly of the Sign of the Times film, because I think it's an incredible, I honestly think it's the best concert film ever. I'm sorry, Talking Heads fans. I know Stop Making Sense is supposed to be the one, but not for me. It's the Sign of the Times film. I think it's incredible. And so it would just be really awesome, you know, to, you know, because Bonnie's no longer with us. And I think Bonnie was an integral part of the band. And I didn't mention her name before, but it's just like, Bonnie was my everything. Bonnie was incredible. So I think it's really important to give also, quote unquote, the band with no name some love. I think it's really important because just personally, when Prince passed, I think I've said this before, I didn't listen to music for about 6 months. And the first album that I actually played was Controversy. And I had it on repeat for a long time. And then the second album was the Black Album, which I had on repeat for a long time. But for months, I solely listened to Love Sexy Rehearsals for months. And I just realized that, oh my God, this is just such a incredible band. And also how lucky we are to actually have these artifacts, you know, of, you know, we actually, if you look hard enough, they fall out of the sky and you can find live shows. It's incredible. And so I really just wish that the estate would give more focus to the videos. Love the, I mean, I love the vault tracks, but I would have sacrificed some, this is just me. I'm not talking for anybody else but me. I would have sacrificed some vault track for some video. I want some video, and I would love to have more live shows, because I really do think that's a really important part of Prince's legacy. So before we move to the next question, because Anil brought up something again that I forgot to say, and I think is really, really awesome, was the attention to detail to those cardboard boxes. I mean, that is the level of detail that you want. I mean, so like having that piece on, I still have my cardboard boxes. Yes, thank you, Elliott. I'm glad I'm not the only one. And I really love the one that the CD box set came with, because it was, you know, like a massive peace sign. And I really wish that the vinyl box would have like, you know, why are you going to give it to me on the side all small? Like, why can't you give it to me really big? You know, like the CD box set. But I really love that attention to detail. And but one thing I will say that I forgot to say, and again, it's only because I love Prince, and I think it's really important. So a lot of us had a problem with the Purple Rain Deluxe CD set because the CDs kept falling out. They just kept falling out. And then the 1999 Deluxe CD box set, I thought was brilliant in terms of, you know, having the cardboard sleeves individually for each of the CDs.
Okay.
And I really wish, I'm afraid to take my CDs out. I mean, you have to be careful because they might get scratched up in the way that it is, and also the DVD for that matter, which I'm actually more, is more my precious cargo more than anything, is that freaking DVD. And because, you know, these things get scratched. So I really wish, you know, like for the next box set, but I love how it's included with the book. It's nice, you know, you pull out the book and you have your CDs and your DVD, but I just wish there was a different way, you know, so that the CDs obviously need to be secure, but also you won't scratch them. However, you know, when I got my CD box set, one of the CDs was loose. You know, it had gotten out, you know, even though you would think it hadn't gotten out, but one of them got out. So that's the reason why I'm like being super anal about like the CDs, because I'm that person. All right. So now we're going to switch to probably our final question, because the time is flying by, is and we haven't even started. It's the vault tracks. So we're going to go back with Zaheer, and I want us to talk about like what other vault tracks, which ones were you really looking forward to? Which ones were you surprised by? Which ones you were like, and which one, and what's missing for you? So Zaheer, kick it off.
All right, so I'm gonna try to keep this short, and only because this is such an overwhelming collection of music. It's hard to just absorb. I need someone, and I know that someone has already probably done this. I need someone to give me like a sequence, because the sequencing of the tracks somewhat puzzled me. At some point they seemed chronological. At some point they seemed around era. But you know, like it would be nice to have like a sequence of like, this was like the Dream Factory playlist, or this was the Camille playlist, or this was the Crystal Ball playlist, just so I could kind of follow the tracks in somewhat logical way, other than like diving in the way that I felt like I had to. I think I want to amplify something that I saw in the comments from Darling Nisi and Camila. You know, like it was interesting, you know, like I think whatever the next deluxe set is going to suggest, whether like a certain kind of, whether they, you know, how they see the Sign of the Times project, right? Because the inclusion of the heavily involved Wendy and Lisa production and arrangement, you know, suggests that the Sign of the Times is seen as the leftovers of this period of incredible collaboration. I think Camila said the carcass, right? Like treating Sign of the Times like the carcass of like the death of the revolution, as opposed to having saved some of those tracks. Like maybe Dream Factory would have gone better with the parade, if there was a parade deluxe, like wrap up the revolution, right? And the Revolution remnants and Wendy and Lisa, who are not the Revolution, they're Wendy and Lisa, right? And then introduce Sign of the Times as the beginning of something new, right? That feeds into, because there are two kinds of tracks in the Vault collection. There's stuff that sounds parade-ish and, you know, even Around the World in a Day-ish. And then there's stuff that suggests where he's going to go. And so I guess the logic was to present this set as the pivotal, like this was the changeover. But, you know, it made it somewhat challenging, you know, in terms of like how to parse out his artistic sensibilities as things were progressing. That said, because I don't want people to think I'm a hater of Wendy and Lisa by raising the issue of collaborations and people taking credit. I am not. For me, the number one thing on this Vault set was the Power Fantastic session. Just incredible, just really, really incredible. One, because I love hearing Prince give studio directions. We have all these bootlegs of his like live jamming and rehearsals where you can hear him teaching the band a song or something, but to like hear him in the studio say, this is what we're going to do, then you're going to hear me say, shh, and then we're going to start up, and then you actually hear him say, shh. Like, it's just, you felt there was an intimacy. There was always an intimacy about that song, but there was like an intimacy about this session that you were sort of brought into the space and knowing, and I appreciate, and again, Dwayne, thank you for your liner notes. I didn't want people to think I'm hating on you either for my earlier criticism, but I appreciated Dwayne's liner notes explaining how this was recorded. Like they were in different parts of the house, which adds a level of magic to this session, right? Like it's all sight unseen. It's all by ear. It's all by feel. It's all by spirit. And, you know, like I prefer the vocals that are in the previously released version, right? Just because I can hear things in his vocal where I could understand why Prince would not have wanted this out. Because there are these clear points in his vocal where he's trying things out and he pulls his voice back. But just the magic of it is incredible to me. I've always wanted to and wonder what it's like to sit in a recording session with Prince, and this gives us that sense. You know, this reminds me of the scenes from the BBC documentary where you see him, you know, in the recording console, like recording. The other thing that I like about this is how he's just so like, he gives this room to breathe, right? And so, you know, as much as people brought stuff to him, I think it's important to talk about Prince inviting, you know, there's an invitation here to spread out. And there's a kind of, where he welcomes the improvisation. And there's a quote somewhere in the liner notes, I don't know if it's tied to this, where he says, there are no accidents. And if there are, it's up to us to look at them as something else. And this is what improvisation is, right? Like this is the value of that artistic practice, of that creative practice of improvisation, that you don't just, you know, have to like pre-script and compose and advance and have it all laid out, that sometimes things just happen. And we get that with what happens with the Ballad of Dorothy Parker. We get that with what happens with If I Was Your Girlfriend. I mean, Susan Rogers writes about these as accidents. And I like when, you know, at least in the podcast, she says, you know, I thought he was going to be really mad with the Ballad of Dorothy Parker because of how it was recorded. And then he, you know, at the end, he's just like, oh, you know, this console is kind of low frequency. And she's like, oh, he knew all along. And I like that, you know, there is an intentionality in Prince's practice, even when he's improvising. And that is about the creative work that's coming from a jazz tradition. And so I really, really, really liked hearing that in play in Power Fantastic. I don't want to take up too much time, but the other thing that I really liked, I mean, there's a lot of other tracks, but the other thing that really was kind of blew my mind was the 1979 recording of I Could Never Take the Place of Your Man, because first of all, with all of the boots circulating and all of the other, you know, kind of stuff that people have said. They knew about these songs, even princevault.com and all that. Like, I don't think anyone ever knew this existed or knew it existed in this form. And I think that, you know, this was recorded, I think, in May of 1979, just short of his 21st birthday. And the level of maturity in the songwriting, in the lyrics, you know, the song sounds like the cousin of When You Were Mine. It's definitely like a Dirty Mind vibe, but the level of maturity in the writing about, like, you know, this kind of, I could never take the place of your man. And then the 20-year-old has the boldness of, but I sure will try. You know, and so there's a 7-year difference that when he, you know, 6 or 7 year difference when he puts it back out, there's a different kind of spirit. So I really liked those two. So those are just the 2 tracks I'm going to talk about. I mean, there are tracks that I kind of like skipped over, and I don't think they merit me talking about. But there are way more tracks that I enjoyed, and I'm almost positive that that what the other co-panelists will mention, I'd probably just readily co-sign.
All right, Zaheer. So we're gonna kick it over to Anil.
I mean, there's so much. Like, I don't even know how you get into all of it, you know. But there were a couple moments that jumped out. I think a lot, like a lot of us, when we've talked about this stuff before, the glimpse into the creative process is like the greatest gift. Because I mean, you know, Prince tweeted at me one time when I was asking him, you know, would you ever let us see you in the studio and you're in process? And he's like, no, that's too sacred, you know. And I'm okay, yeah, but I still want to see it, you know. And so I think what Zara said about the you know, the never take place to your man demo, I think that's there. I think part of why this version of Our Fantastic, besides the song obviously being such a miracle, the reason it's so affecting is the intimacy of Prince talking to his band and guiding them is this vulnerable act of creation, and that's shared with us and that we get to witness it. I think those are just breathtaking moments. I think I draw the contrast to like Large Room with No Light, which, you know, I think I had to, you know, the same grain like probably y'all did back in the day. And that was like this, you know, really produced, ambitious, elaborate production, right? But you didn't get the sense that that somebody was guiding every aspect of it because you get the sort of finished result. And so I think having both of those kinds of things juxtaposed with one another is just it's breathtaking, you know. And then the moment where you see his editing hand in play, like I think Wally, it's interesting. I never heard such a legend around Cosmic Day back in the day. Like the marketing compilation has talked about it like this is a fan favorite, whatever. It's like I'd heard of it. I heard a snippet of it that was circulating a couple years ago, and I was like, that's fine. Still, I mean, even hearing the full version, I love the instrumental coda. The rest of it, it's not the best thing on the collection for me. But like Wally, I realized so much of the narrative of that song to me is, you know, Susan Rogers telling of Prince wielding his editing hand and saying, like, I'm gonna erase the first version and put this out there. And that carried such a weight to me because it's the perception of how we got the information about the song, you know. And I, you know, nothing but respect for Susan Rogers. She's a legend, rightfully so. But also she built up the story of it inadvertently. I think she's the only person that could talked about it. And so her perception shaped my perception of it. But you know, she was sort of in a thoughtful way, I think a little more dismissive of, say, Adonis and Bathsheba. And that song I think is better than Wally. Like I'm like that a guitar solo like that. I didn't hear him doing that kind of lyrical guitar solo until well into the '90s, until you get to Morning Papers or Savior or something like that. And so that was like a really, you know, it challenged all these conceptions that I had of when Prince developed certain skills. I did not think he was writing songs in the caliber of Sign of the Times when he was 21 years old, but there are songs on Sign of the Times that he wrote when he was 21 years old. You know, and actually the other thing that really jumped out to me in terms of like hearing his decision making coming through in the music was Walking in Glory. I mean, I think between Walking in Glory and One of the Dawn the Morning Comes, it's sort of his best gospel work, period, maybe in his entire career. And Walking in Glory, you know, the second half turning into United for West Compton, I was like, oh, Well, yeah, no wonder he felt like maybe the Black Album didn't come from a good place and was a little bit, sacrilegious or whatever. I was like, yeah, I see exactly how he got there. He's like, this song went two different ways. This one jam session went two different ways, and one was a praise song, and one was not. And that's such a glimpse at like the choices he was making about what went where. Um, I think that's just like we didn't get that glimpse. We didn't get to be into how he was choosing what he put out in front of us and shared with us. And so that's the parts where, aside from the music itself, just the perception of it and the view into it. Like Forever in My Life, this alternate take. I mean, the song is obviously one of his all-time greats, and to hear this alternate take where it actually has an acoustic guitar that sounds like his early records to me. It sounds like it's off of For You. And hearing that and thinking, oh, and then he took this out, and the truth of it is because Forever in My Life on their album version, the record version, doesn't have those backing chords. I don't think I knew what the chord progression of the song was. It could have been a one chord song. It could have been no key changes song. And the guitar makes evident that there was something going on harmonically that was much, much more elaborate, and that he chose to take that out. And we see that with the version 2 of Witness for the Prosecution. We see that with version 2 of Big Tall Wall. He was taking out complexity that he obviously had the capacity to do. He'd had that in the first versions. And then he kept removing that. And this idea of him editing himself to take out the actually the evidence of his true musical genius, to simplify to something that was about his compositional genius, and have that confidence as an arranger. I think that's one of the breakthroughs of the album. And we knew that from the evidence of what we had, but we didn't ever see the before and the after. We never saw he did this and then he took this, and they're, you think just like Witness for the Prosecution, how different these two versions are is such a testament to that he could conceive of those being the same song. And every other artist would be like, there's a whole album in between just those two versions of that one song. I think that was a revelation. That was really something that was extraordinary and such a gift. And then you see also, I think the back half of the vault tracks is really a lot of protege songs, and or potential protege songs. And you see, Promise to Be True as a song for Bonnie Raitt, or for anyone, but for Bonnie Raitt or whoever. You're like, oh yeah, I Need a Man. Like that would be incredible. And then like Emotional Pump, which is a song that I love, but I'm like, that's not a Joni Mitchell song. Like she must have gotten it and been like, thank you, that's very nice. And so I really it was interesting because he was sort of just so clearly like in such a creative, almost manic phase, that there was just something everywhere. And then, and Arsenio just sort of said this in the comments, but it did reveal what a good editor he was. And I think the criticism was he always didn't know how to edit. And I think I had always felt a little bit like, and this I think goes to the point of, whiteness constructing the perceptions of Prince. I had felt like when Warner Brothers said Crystal Ball should be 3 records, should be 2 records, make it Sign of the Times, I was like, they were probably right. They probably right. Commercial constraints and who could pull this off, and sometimes he didn't know how to edit himself. And I realized I was complicit in that patronizing view of him as an artist, because actually, in reality, it was even better than the legend. The songs that didn't make Sign of the Times were even better than everything else that got accolades that year. They were every bit the equal of what was on the album. And again, we can pick, oh, I didn't like this outtake, I did like that outtake, but we do that with the record that came out. And so I think the idea that if somebody told you there were 2 more records that could have been part of Songs of the Key of Life, or the White Album, you'd be like, maybe. And I feel like, and they're just as good, sometimes better, you wouldn't believe it. And in this case, with a record that's every bit the peer or the superior to those records, you have this album that's like 2 records came out, 2, 3, 4 more could have come out, and they would have every bit as strong. That, even being the fans that we are of him, even being the students of his work, I don't think I would have believed that the reality exceeds the legend. And the vault tracks prove it. I think that's such a it felt like getting a new Prince album for real.
All right, Miles.
Zaheer, is it true that you haven't played Hit and Run Part 2? I mean, no diss. I'm trying to I'm trying to confirm. Is it you or is it somebody else that I know?
It is me.
Okay.
And the reason is
No, I know the reason.
yeah,
but go
it's
ahead.
because for people who are like, what's that all about? Is because that's Prince's last authorized released album while he was alive, and I don't want to play the last album.
Right.
I will wait very long.
Right.
Like y'all and to whoever, all of my friends, when I'm in that hospital bed and you feel like I'm ready to go, come bring me the last album and I'll listen to it then. But until then, I don't want to listen to the last album.
No, that's what I thought, and that's the reason that I thought, because I have not listened to the live portion of this huge box set that we got, and I just want to have a portion of it that is unlistened to, so that I have something to look forward to. Like, I didn't want to play it all. I have played everything else, but that I'm just sort of leaving aside, until a rainy day when I really miss them or something and I want to hear it. I want to mention the Ballad of Dorothy Parker, and I want to mention the horns on Ballad of Dorothy Parker. I know that there are people who aren't crazy about it. There are people like, oh wow, I fall somewhere in the middle, let's say. Before streaming was a thing, there were songs that people really loved, like Adore, for example, like the Ballad of Dorothy Parker, for example, that were not released as singles, because I assume that the record company figured, well, if they really love these songs, they're just going to have to invest in buying the whole double album. Like, these are songs that we're not going to drop as singles, so that the sales of the album can be higher. And I feel like the horn arrangement on Ballad of Dorothy Parker is something that would have been like the Ballad of Dorothy Parker 12-inch. Like, had it been a single, that would have been what we would have heard, maybe. That would have been a little bonus value that would have been added to the single. And so to hear that was cool to me. I didn't know it existed before, and I had never heard it before, bootleg wise. And so I'm not going to say it's a highlight of the entire thing. There's so much there that to choose from, but I wanted to mention it. It hadn't come up. I like Visions, and Visions doesn't have Prince on it. Visions is just Lisa, but the opening melody of Visions, which I keep listening for it at the end, like I think she's going to return to it and she doesn't, but the opening of Visions it's just really beautiful to me. I always loved Wendy and Lisa as their solo albums are great. Waterfalls is great. Like, This Is the Life, like, I have favorite Wendy and Lisa tracks, and Visions, as I understand, was actually released as a bonus track on Eroica. Years later, I wasn't aware of that, and I'd never heard it. Well, actually, I heard it because it's a bootleg, but I always still love that opening phrase of hers. What else? Power Fantastic is my favorite. For all the reasons I hear mentioned. I don't want to take up too much time because we're winding toward the end. But Power Fantastic was a favorite. Blanche was a favorite because I love Prince, the rock god. And it was a funky guitar-based groove that I loved. Just like I loved Vagina on the 1999 Super Deluxe. Like, that kind of stuff really does it for me. That's one of the primary reasons I go to Prince. I love it when he's in that frame of mind, and I like Blanche. I don't want to delve too much into what I didn't like, because I don't like spitballs. But let's say the Cocoa Boys is not really a favorite. Let's say A Place in Heaven backwards is kind of, I could never hear that again probably. It makes a nice companion piece to the end of Darling Nikki with the backmasking of the voices and stuff, and maybe it could have been done in a certain way on Dream Factory that would have made sense to the overall album, but no. And that, yeah, let's leave it at that. Because I want to hear what Elliott has to say.
All right, Elliott, take it away.
All right, and I'll try and make this quick, obviously, because we don't have too much time. But I will say this is what our 5th time doing this, sort of getting the band back together, and without fail, Miles and I.
You hated the horns.
I hated the horns of Dorothy Parker. I hated the horns of Dorothy Parker. I never heard that version, and then I got to it and I was like, oh, this is gonna, I was so excited, right? Obviously, because the song is so good. And then I was like, oh no. And it actually reminded me actually about my students, right? So when I teach parade to them and we talk about Claire Fisher, right? I also play them side by side, right? The songs with the Claire Fisher kind of arrangements, right? And those that were, that actually had those arrangements, but Prince took them out, right? And so when I played them sort of new position with the Claire Fisher arrangements, students were like, "Oh no, this is not no. Like we liked it scaled back. Bring it back to us when it's scaled back." And they were like, and to go to actually sort of Anil's point, right? I do that in part to highlight Prince's editing process. And what a good kind of editor he was and is, and what kind of ear he had. And so for me, when I heard Dorothy Parker put the horns, I was like, I'm so happy he took them out. I'm so happy that was, because there's something about the kind of sort of arrangement that works. I always think about Dorothy Parker, and I think about I think about Sly Stone. Like there's something very right. There's something very Sly Stone about it. And so when the added horns take away that Sly Stone-ness of that song. And so like for me, I'm like, no, like without the horn. So that was the song that I was like, oh no, I could have gone my entire life without knowing that this existed. I wish I didn't know that it existed. But I am looking forward to seeing my students' reactions when we sort of get to this point and talking about Sign of the Times. So for me, I think that was the main song that I was like, oh, I really didn't want to hear this. I mean, favorites. Yeah. It's a long list. I mean, to say this, Miles, you and I are actually in agreement. I love Blanche. It was just fantastic. And it, obviously, right? It's yeah. I mean that. Right? I wasn't gonna bring that up because we don't have time. But part of also why I like it, right, is because sort of a streetcar named Desire, right? That's what Prince is riffing off of, and so like it goes back into, for me, the kind of literary mind of Prince, right? The kinds of things that Prince is reading, and how he's sort of drawing inspiration and taking these to actually sort of new heights. Obviously, in terms of Dorothy Parker being another kind of thing, right? That I when we think about Prince, right, as this kind of musical genius, obviously. I think that there's definitely a literary aspect to him, right? I think that the way in which Prince thinks through things, Miles, you always say this, right? A good writer also reads, and so we can get a window into Prince the writer through songs songs like Blanche. And so for me, when I got to that, I was like, oh, this is great. This is fantastic. I do very much like Zaheer have an issue with the sequencing. I want to kind of know a little bit more, because to go from, I can never take the place of your man to the teacher was a bit jarring for me. I was like, where are we going here? I didn't really like that transition. I think in part because I'm not the biggest fan of teacher. Might get hate for that, but it is what it is. And so like, I wanted to know a little bit more about the sequencing. And then last thing, the kind of alternate takes were really, really cool. I think because for me, it also harkens back to the kind of 90s jazz kind of reissues of albums, right? And sort of how you got the alternate takes of things. I don't know if this was intentional to kind of have that reference to the 90s kind of jazz reissues, but it was a brilliant thing. And so I just love to hear the different kinds of takes, and to go back to Neil's point, how Prince's mind is working, and saying like, I could just recreate the song, same lyrics, but sort of musically reframe it in a really, really powerful way. So I really appreciated that. I will give it on back.
All right, so we're at time, almost a minute, but I'm going to say my piece super quick. And I am going to do a podcast about this multi-part podcast, because obviously an hour and a half isn't enough even to just talk about the vault tracks alone. And if you want to go on that journey with me, it's going to be a long journey, but you can. So, because I think it's important. And this is what I live for. This is what I do. I hang out with my friends and I talk about Prince for hours. Not 1 hour, not 90 minutes, but 5, 6, 7 hours at a time. Yes, I still do. So for me, the one vault track I was really looking forward to was a pristine copy of In a Large Room with No Light. I've always wanted that. That was the first thing I listened to. And the other song I really wanted was It Ain't Over Till the Fat Lady Sings, because I heard that in the Prince orchestra strings thing that Questlove curated. It was incredible hearing that live. So I was really excited to get that as well. And the song I didn't know about that I was super excited because it has an Under the Cherry Moon connection. And that's my favorite Prince film, if you know me. And that is And That Says What? You know, she gets a $21 million trust fund. Okay, anyway. So, And That Says What? So and That Says What? And It Ain't Over Till the Fat Lady Sings. What they have in common are they are instrumentals. So what's really missing for me personally from the Sign of the Times Super Deluxe box set is the Flesh sessions, which leads into Madhouse. If I could have, and maybe I was like, maybe it's because we're going to have a Madhouse box set, Super Deluxe box set. Bring it on. That would be fantastic. Okay, that's all I got to say. So we are going to take a break. We want to thank everyone here, my brothers, for being with me a 5th time in 3 years. And I hope that you'll join me next year for 1 + 1 + 1 is 3, which is going to be Controversy. We're going to be celebrating 40 years of Controversy, 30 years of Diamonds and Pearls. Thank Elliott for that. And 20 years of the Rainbow Children. Okay, so we're going to come back and it's going to be a separate link on both Facebook and YouTube for a panel about the Utrecht live show. And if this is enough, you've had it, like, okay, 90 minutes is done, great. But we are going to be rocking until 8 o'clock tonight, but we're going to take a quick 30-minute break so we can move our bodies, grab some water, eat something. For me, it's going to be some Cheetos or some Doritos or something like that. And hopefully you'll be back at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Standards Time. And I would just like, thank you guys so much for being here. You don't have to be here. And everyone in the audience, you don't have to be here either. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us for our 5th time together. It was so special. So thank you all. Peace.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Peace, y'all.